superficial stuff that hopefully you were already going through and being able to identify, but let's make sure. This main portion, of course, is the cerebrum, cerebellum, bellum. B for bell, B for back. Cerebellum is in the back. Some people are confusing the cerebrum and cerebellum on this. Then brain stem here. All of this, cerebellum. Okay, you need to identify the lobes just like you did in the plastic model. Remember, you'll have the plastic model and the actual sheep brain on the lab practical. So we'll stick pins in it in certain places, ask you identify this or what's the function of this structure, just like we'll do with the plastic model. So for lobes, this would be the frontal lobe, and I'll make it obvious, this would be the parietal lobe. Make sure I'm way on the side for the temporal lobe. And then, of course, to the back for the occipital lobe. So those are pretty obvious. Know your functions for each of those, just like you need to know for plastic model. This slit right down the middle is the longitudinal fissure. Separates the right and left cerebral hemispheres. Good. Okay. Now, you do not need to know in the sheep brain that you had to know in the plastic model. You don't have to know the lateral sulcus. You don't have to know the insula. You don't have to know or find the central sulcus or the pre or post central gyri. It's a little too difficult. You might not be positive. So instead, those will stick on the plastic, not on this. Now, back to what you do have to know. You have to know the basic lobes, besides insula, because we're not going to cut into it, and the functions. Let's see. This, of course, longitudinal fissure, that would be what structure is this, or maybe it'll say what divot is this, or line. On the cerebellum, remember the basic function of the cerebellum is for balance and coordination. You either can write the function as the lab manual writes it, which is a little bit longer, or if you want to use the shortened version, I think it's shortened, it's balance and coordination. If you just say balance, I will take half off. Okay, so if you're going to use that shortcut, I want both words, just a heads up. The middle of the cerebellum is the vermis, which in the sheep is very large. It goes from here to here. I'll stick my pointer right in the middle. That is the vermis. When you cut the sheep brain, you will be cutting right through the vermis. Now remember, in the human brain, it wasn't that visible. Now it's big and it sticks up, actually, bigger than the other parts of the cerebellum. If I flip it upside down, let's go over the parts of the brain stem. Well, I'll go right in the top. At the top would be the midbrain, or the most superior, or the most anterior, I should say. And then the bump is the pons. And then down from that is the medulla oblongata. Now, coming off of that is the spinal cord. If you notice, the spinal cord is much thinner than the medulla oblongata. Even though the medulla oblongata connects to it, you can actually see where the spinal cord starts because it's a lot smaller. Medulla oblongata is thicker, closer to the size of the pons in this case. Now, when you first go to work on your sheep, I was saying be careful of not ripping this little thing off. This is on the outside is the dura mater. That actually would cover this whole sheep, but they've cut all of it off except right here. When you go to remove it, you need to be oh so careful about lifting it up, because if you just rip it off, you're going to rip nerves off with it, and some that you need to know. Just the ones that we did on the plastic model, that's what you need to know in here as well. A trigeminal is on the side of the pons, many times it gets ripped off. So what you do is you carefully lift, and when you see the white lines, try to cut them right at the top so they don't rip off completely. So you just kind of cut and then cut them at the top.
Mine are only hanging on by 2.
That might be. And those you don't even need, so you could rip that off if you wanted to. Let me see what yours looks like.
No, not that. That's all I'm doing.
Okay. Alright, fortunately, you still have part of the trigeminal. This one we don't need. Oh, there's the other part of the trigeminal. Let me try to keep that. So you see what I mean? You cut at the top, and you might actually keep some of it on. So we kept our trigeminal on the other side. Middle thing I don't need. Then you're going to pull up, and you're going to see some other white lines, oculomotor. You do need those, so I would again cut at the top so you don't pull them off.
Now, what was that you cutting?
Oculomotor nerves. I'll go back over it. And then the rest is capillaries and pia mater I don't need, so just take it off. Now it's off. What I do want to point out is the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is actually within this mess of stuff. It is right here. But you're going to end up removing it. So you don't have to identify it. But I'm just, just letting you know, hey, that's where it is. Well, it is like a bean shape, but...
Is this it at the tip
And
of this
remember,
thing?
a lot of these get smushed, too.
Is this it here at the tip of this?
Exactly. Yep.
So that's the infundibulum thing that's...
Yeah, that connected to it. Coming off here. This little brown tissue, yeah. That was the infundibulum that led into the pituitary. But you don't need to identify that because it comes off with our dura mater. Thank you. I'm going to hold on to yours for a moment. Now that we're looking at the underside, let's talk about some of these cranial nerve structures. We'll start towards the front. There was the olfactory bulb. Olfactory bulb is the tip, just the tip. The very top. Now, if you go back, and sometimes you might have to remove a little bit of capillary. All these brown lines, by the way, are capillaries. You just can, if you can't see something, you can kind of just work them out. Then your olfactory tracts are